This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 449 for Tuesday, August 23rd. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we're into. Joining me this week, Ryan Murphy is back. You can find him at Zombies Ate My Podcast, Dungeons and Diapers, and the Gamers In Podcast, as well as R. Murphy on Twitter. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you. It's great to be back. I see here you didn't put in the notes when the last time I was on, but I feel like it was only a month ago.
It's only been a couple of months. I think it was around June, around E3, I think is when we last spoke.
Oh, that's right. Right out. June feels like forever ago.
I know, right? And then at the same time, it's the end of August. I'm like, what happened to summer? Like when did it become back to school for some people in the States and soon Canada? You know, like it's a weird feeling I find, because it's still very warm, and I don't think back to school in hot weather. I think back to school fall weather. I'm not sure about you, but that's kind of like where my brain goes.
Yes. Yeah. I think before I had kids that were in school, back to school, and between that window of actually going back to school and having to prep kids for back to school, you're right. Like, I think all of a sudden you notice, the sun's going down faster. It's a little cooler at night. But yeah, the fall is just around the corner, and back to school sales started like June 1. I think I've seen Halloween stuff out at some of the stores. So.
You took the joke out of my mouth. I was out to get groceries the other day, and there was Halloween candy lining the candy aisles in the boxes. And I was just like, really? Like, none of it had like the orange packaging. Like, it was all just kind of standard, like Cadbury or, Nestle or whatever the main logo is. You know, it was like a red box or something like that. It wasn't like specifically Halloween themed. But they definitely had like the Halloween boxes of small chocolate bars and stuff on the shelves this was a couple days ago. So August 20th, with Halloween not being until the end of October. On one hand, I guess I can forgive, given the supply chain issues that a lot of places are suffering from. I can maybe understand big chains wanting to get their holiday stuff in and somewhere. Rather than waiting until the normal time that they would order it, only to have it be late. Because if your Halloween candy shows up on November 3rd, that doesn't really do you any good, No,
that is true. That is true. But now it's going to be like, okay, now they're going to try to use that excuse to get Halloween candy out in June. Because I don't even think that stuff expires these days, or at least if it does, it's a year out.
Oh, probably more than that.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the kind you're buying, but I think you're right. That might be the case this year. Is they're just like, well, we got to make room for Halloween, and I'm honestly, for the record, I'm fine having Halloween stuff out early. That's fine by me. It's one day, so like everyone's got to get ready for one day, or maybe two, depending on if you live in some small communities will have like they'll move Halloween for one reason or another, maybe to get it on a week. I don't even know when it is this year, but. It's when Christmas stuff is kind of out super early, because it's like that feels like more of a season that you're preparing for, and it's like we have plenty of time to get to that. But Halloween, I'm fine with. I like seeing the costumes and stuff and seeing what's out there and what's popular. So
I think that when Christmas comes early, it does bother me more. Specifically, and I know I've said this on the podcast before, but I tend to not even think about Christmas until after Remembrance Day, November 11th in Canada. And even then I find too close to that is a little bit, it just feels disrespectful. Like I feel like just wait a week, mid-November. I mean, I think the States has got it right. Like the late November Thanksgiving holiday is kind of when the holiday stuff kind of starts. I think that's about right in terms of retail, but it's always earlier and earlier every year as far as I'm concerned. The one thing I do take advantage of is the Black Friday sales, which I'm reminding myself now that I should take advantage of. Because I'm in the market for a new camera, and I don't know whether I should buy now or whether I should wait. But there's a lot of research that has to happen before that. But still, like it's one of those things where like I'm so close to it now that you just know that there's potentially decent savings during the Black Friday sales, especially online. So we'll have to wait and see. But true to form, whenever we have you on the show, you and I usually end up talking about gaming. And I've actually been doing a lot of gaming the last week, specifically to the point where I don't really think I've watched much outside of like YouTube videos and small content and stuff like that. I don't have a lot to really talk about. But I wanted to know what you have been playing since the last time we spoke.
It's kind of a weird summer. Usually in summer, there's not a lot of games coming out, but this year, there was a very big game that was supposed to come out in September, but then oddly enough was pushed forward and came out 3 months early, and that was Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which is a JRPG on the Nintendo Switch. And yeah, like I said, it was originally supposed to come out in September, which I think for me would have been play it for a little bit and then get into all the other fall releases. Not that I didn't want to play it, just that I would get easily distracted. But they released it at the end of July, so it's kind of been my go-to summer game for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and that's really all I've been playing outside of a few other games. But it's as the title suggests, it's the third in the series. Similar to Final Fantasy, they are disconnected experiences. You don't have to have played Xenoblade Chronicles 1 or 2 to fully appreciate 3. Although I'll say this, it really does help to have played one of the other ones in terms of like getting into the combat and the gameplay, because it is one of those games that has like a more complex, combat system. They layer it on, not thick, but they layer it on piece by piece as you're playing. There's lots of tutorials to kind of get you going, but it is very much like you have direct control over your characters. In battle, you can move them around. It's all in real time, but it's all very auto battle focused. So you move your characters into position, they start attacking, they have an auto attack, and then you're kind of using abilities, which they call arts. And at the beginning of the game, you're just kind of queuing up like 3 arts, and you're just hitting the button as they refresh, and they refresh based on how much auto attacking you're doing. Very simple, but as the game progresses, they add like canceling abilities. So like queuing up your arts so that you can get more damage and bonus damage as you cancel from one into the other. They have like a super ability that you can charge up. They have like morphing. Like again, it gets so complex. So if you were to watch someone play 10 hours in, you'd be like, wow, this looks really complex in terms of a combat system. But again, like it is very much built up over the first 10 hours as you're doing this combat. So I do suggest to people, if they check it out, to try to see more of the marketing videos that kind of display it, because I feel like if you were to watch just some YouTube video of someone playing, it might be like, oh, this looks really complex, and it is, and that's why I'm afraid to put it down, because if I put it down, I'll forget how to play when I go back to it.
I'm looking at screenshots now, and it looks like it's got more going on than some MMOs that I've played.
Yeah, it's a fairly large game, and I think gone are the days where, and I think the developers behind the franchise have really used the platforms to their best ability. Like they are a Nintendo second party, or maybe Nintendo owns them, but either way, they work very closely with Nintendo. This is Monolith Studios, and they've made games of this caliber for even the Nintendo Wii. Like again, like I said, with this specific developer, gone are the days of saying, oh, well, this is a good game for, a Nintendo Wii or Nintendo Switch. Like they really do develop these big, open, expansive worlds with very complex gameplay and honestly, like a really engaging story, mostly voice acted. I'd say all the cinematic stuff is voice acted. Take it or leave it, depending on whether you like whether you want everything to be voice acted. I personally prefer to have at least the cinematic stuff to be voice acted. I'm fine reading if it's like a side quest or it's just a simple interaction between characters to kind of move the plot forward. But when there's a lot of cinematic action in this game, a lot of cutscenes, and I think that's where the voice acting really shines and is required. I think when you're playing this game, but yeah, it's a big world. Like you walk into these worlds and you can see, the vistas and the mountains and in the background, and you see all the monsters sort of strewn across the landscape, and you can avoid them if you want, or you can walk up to them and start, initiating combat and stuff. And there's so much to do in this game, and it can be tough to look at it to know where to start. But I think like if you're looking at Xenoblade Chronicles, don't don't be fooled and be like, oh, I'll have to check out the first two, because they are all available on the Switch. The developer did go back to the one that was on the Wii and remastered it for the Switch, so you can play 1, 2, and 3 on the Nintendo Switch. But again, like I feel like in terms of getting the best experience between the three, I think this third one really takes what worked really well in those first two and made a strong case for you skipping right to 3. And that, like I said, you don't need to have played the other two story wise. There are connections, very limited and very limited connections, and most of those connections I haven't beat it yet, but in 2, most of those connections came in at the very end, and it was a blink if you missed it type thing. Easter egg for fans of the series, but not required. Not in terms of Easter, not even like to the terms of like a Marvel Easter egg where it's like, oh, I understood that reference and that's going to come into play in 2 movies from now. No, this is just like, oh, that was that one character, and stuff is happening in the background. Again, it's not as connected as it's very similar to Final Fantasy, where you don't need to go back to Final Fantasy 1. You can just play 7 Remake if you want, which is what I did. I've not played a Final Fantasy game outside of to completion, that is, outside of 7 Remake. But yeah, this JRPG has been keeping me very busy on the Switch for my gaming time.
I actually thought that I had seen this before, but I had just seen something similar because I play mostly console on Xbox, or exclusively because that's the only console that I own. But it was Tales of Arise that looks very similar, at least in some of the promotion art and stills and stuff, to Xenoblade Chronicles 3. But it looks like the combat in Xenoblade is like, is it not turn-based, but it looks like you can swap characters or something?
Yeah, so in this specific game, you have very early on, you're controlling 3 characters, and not long after that, after the prologue, you do have direct control over 6 characters. You can, as you're walking around in the overworld and in battle, you can switch between those characters with the push of a button. So which is really cool, because again, like all games, you're gonna have characters that you really like and that you want to play as more than others, and there's obviously like a main character that the game is very much setting up as like, this is the person you start controlling, and if you never switch, that's fine. But honestly, the game really encourages you to switch up your characters, both in terms of walking around in the overworld, but also in combat. And I think where that comes into play, especially in combat, is it gives you an opportunity to try out the different, they call them classes, but I think if you were a Final Fantasy player, you might be more familiar with like the job system, where instead of having like a set class for your character or choosing it from the very beginning, you can play as, I think there are 40 different classes that all have different abilities and different mechanics. And obviously there are roles like damage, healing, and defense, and you have to balance your team, especially if you're going up against some harder enemies. But you can pick your favorite character and say, okay, I'm going to switch up the class for this character that I really enjoy every hour or two. And I think that's what I've been doing as I'm playing through it, as I'm unlocking new classes as I progress through the game. So by the time I get used to a class, I'm able to switch it out and be like, oh, let's try something different. Now I'm going to play as my favorite character, but this time she's going to be a healer. This time I'm going to make Noah, the main character, a defense person, even though they started as a damage dealer. So it's very flexible in that approach.
That's cool. It's nice that you have those options, because I found when I was into either RPGs or MMOs that you'd want to do one particular race because they look cool, or for whatever reason you wanted to have a specific class or profession, but then you find that it would be restricted. Like some specifically something like an elf, and because the race has got like some sort of special ethereal ties, you can't be like a warlock or anything dark and creepy. You kind of have to be like a druid or a mage or something a little bit more bright and positive because of the race that you've selected. Whereas, and we'll get into this in a minute, whereas other games you can just, it's not so much a class as it is like a profession, or a even just a build out. Like I see a lot now where you can have like choose your character based on whatever RPG you want to, like whatever role you want to play, and then you just adjust as you level. You can say adjust the we'll call it the loadout, I guess. It's like choosing different weapons, but you have different abilities, and that ends up changing your playstyle, because like maybe you end up being a little bit more tanky, or maybe you end up, like you said, being a little bit more healing, even though you didn't start out that way.
Yeah, yeah. It's. I've never really played a game that uses this system. I most of the action RPGs or JRPGs that I've played, like you have different characters in your party, but they have a specific class that will evolve over time, get new abilities, get new weapons, new equipment. But in this case, you are very much encouraged to the system will actually tell you, like, once you hit a max rank with that class, like get to, I think it's rank 10, they'll say, hey, there's no point in continuing to play with this character in this class. Move on, pick a new one. And it's a big splash screen. And but that being said, if you've really enjoyed, I really liked playing as this class. When you unlock a new hero class, which is through a story quest or something, um, that hero will grant one person in your party. They call it, I think, the class inheritor, and that one character will be able to play as that class right away. But as you play with that class in your party, your other party members slowly learn and unlock that class as well. So by the time you finish it with one character, a few others will have it unlocked. So if you really, oh, I had a great time playing as that with those abilities for the last 3 or 4 hours or whatever, I want to keep going. So I'm gonna put this class on another character, and continue to progress with that hero and just keep going. And again, like it's a very flexible system, and I'm sure it was a ton of work to implement, because again, like you have 6 characters. I think there are 40 hero classes. So the permutations there, because again, when you switch your class, it changes the way your character looks. Like their outfit is based on the class that you choose. So if you're a damage dealer, you might have like not just a giant sword, but you might have a different outfit on as well. And so they had to create those outfits for 6 different characters while still keeping them in line with their look and feel. So it's totally unique in the way that they've set that up. But it does save them from having to design a bunch of different armor. Like there's probably like a balancing act there, but I really appreciate the way that they've set this one up. And the story is like, again, if you've played other JRPGs, I think you kind of have an idea going in as to what the story will be like. And I think if you watch some of the marketing trailers from Nintendo, you'll get a good idea as to whether you'll like the story. I'm enjoying the story. The characters are really fun. It's a typical sort of JRPG setup where you are a group of heroes. Turns out the world is not as you know it. You've discovered something. And you are now the enemy of everyone, and you have to travel across the lands to try to free everyone from the bad guys, essentially. And there are revelations along the way, I'm sure, that have and will mix things up. But that's the basic setup: is your 6 friends trying to save the world, which is, again, most RPGs.
Yeah. Now, do you have these are specific friends? You're not creating characters, like these are characters prefab from the game. So you've got a mix of male and female characters, and you can't change that. You're just kind of stuck with whatever they've designed.
Yeah, so the 6 characters in your party, they're pre-designed. There's no custom creations. However, like you do have a 7th bonus member in your party, and that's where the hero classes come in. So while you're not switching out your main party, you do have that 7 slot to allow you to augment your party. So say you want an additional damage dealer and you really like this one character that you picked up, you can set that slot to be that damage dealer. And it does mix things up. It puts some fresh faces in the cutscenes and the action, and I think again it goes a long way to offer that little bit of change, because very much early on, like you get your 6 characters, and they don't move away from that, and it's a big RPG, so it's about I think it's like 100 hours or so if you just kind of like go down the main path. So it's nice that at least you can change up that 7th slot, and I find I'm changing it like just based on story. I change it maybe like every 4 or 5 hours. So you're steadily unlocking these new characters to add to your roster.
And is the combat turn-based or is it live?
It is real time. The combat's real time, and I think where it can appear to be turn based, especially in the marketing stuff, is you have your arts that are slowly charging over time. So because it's real time, you can control your characters, you position your characters in a way that suits the arts that you're using, the abilities, and then as they charge, some arts might be more effective if you're attacking from the side. Some arts might work better if you're attacking from behind your enemy. And that all comes into the strategy, and it really depends on which character you're playing, and it is all real time, but there's some strategy to it as well. Like you want to queue up your abilities in a way that it's going to maximize damage, and there are other wrinkles that they implement down the road in terms of just additional ways that you can deal damage, and it really is all about timing. It is not a turn-based game where you can kind of set down the controller. You kind of have to be active in the combat. So yeah, if you're looking for a turn-based game from a JRPG perspective, this one isn't it. But I really found like the combat, it's like queuing up attacks. It's not as stressful. It's not like a game where you have to be on the ball right away. But there are bonuses to kind of queuing up your attacks in specific way and strategies and stuff, but it's not stressful. It's not laid back like a turn-based game, but it's not stressful like say like a Call of Duty shooter or something like that. It's kind of an in between where you can sit back, analyze what's going on. Like you're not, as long as you're fighting enemies at your level, you're not going to wipe the party.
Right.
You should be fine. But again, like I've really found the combat to be satisfying, but also not too stressful. It's a really good balance.
Cool. I've often been curious about the JRPG games like this, like Tales of Arise and other stuff that I see on Game Pass. And just very, very often when I look into them, they end up being turn-based, and they don't even look like they have much for animation. It looks like it's just like a 2D sprite that kind of sits there on the screen across from another 2 or 3 2D sprites, and you just decide who attacks first and stuff. And it's like, well, that doesn't seem like I'm using the Xbox for a game that's really, worth it. Now, there might be animated cutscenes in the story that I'm missing out, but I prefer, like you said, live action combat, real time and stuff like that. So, and because I've not found that I like turn-based games either. Like even if they are 3D and animated, and there's like when you do eventually fight, you shoot your rockets or your lasers or your abilities or whatever. And I don't find I like those. I much prefer I like to be able to control and be immersed in the 3D world and kind of walk around and run around and stuff.
Yeah. And Tales of Arise is real time, real time combat, but they did something in a way where when they they would have cinematic moments in Tales of Arise, but they would also have moments where I think they called them skits. There was a lot of they would dial back the cinematicness of it, and it would be sort of like a comic book style presentation. It was all voice acted in those moments, but it wasn't all cinematic 3D movement. It was sometimes presenting like more of a 2D approach in terms of telling the story, but for the most part, that one was all real time. That one was all have full voice acted cutscenes, and I think for Xenoblade, they do prioritize action sequences with voice acting. So there are a lot of cutscenes where you can set the controller down and watch what's going on screen. But there are other moments where you have to do some reading and such. But it's not long winded. I think they really do understand, like, okay, let's save the exposition and the story explainers for like the cutscenes and stuff, and then when we just need to get from point A to point B, let's do a couple quick voice dialogues that the player will have to read. And but yeah, it certainly takes advantage of the Nintendo Switch. Like, it really plays really well docked, plays really well undocked, so you can play it handheld. And the only sort of critique I've seen in terms of playing handheld is that the text gets really small and there's a lot of stuff on screen. So if you are on a Switch Lite, you might take some time to get used to the UI and what you're doing in the game. But if you're playing on a normal Switch where you can be docked or undocked, I find like it's best to play enough docked on the big screen so that you kind of know where all the UI elements are. And then when you're playing handheld mode, like, it's not as big a deal. But again, that's something that Switch players have been battling for the last 5 years. So most folks, I think, have gotten used to it. But if you're a new Switch player and you want to pick up this big JRPG for handheld mode only, you probably will have some growing pains with the UI in such a small screen space.
From the screenshots, there does look to be a lot on screen to handle. Like I said, it does kind of rival MMOs in terms of what I've seen on screen in big battles and like raids and stuff like that. Well, speaking of RPGs and leaning into the MMO RPG, I have had the itch lately to get back into an MMO. And ironically, it's more for the open world story and quests and exploration than it is any kind of like end game raids where you see like, lots of numbers and boxes and windows and stuff with like 60 people taking on some crazy world boss. And after a bunch of research, I decided to get back into Guild Wars 2. And I say back with giant air quotes because I played very briefly. I think I got to level 5 back in like 2012 or 2014 or something like that. I just never had the time to get back into another MMO. For folks that don't know, I've played World of Warcraft for years, long time ago, probably ending around 2012, 2014. I think I tried to get back into it around 2014 with some friends from work, but ultimately just didn't find it all that compelling, and I just didn't have the time. But I do now, and after looking around and seeing that the popular choices were Guild Wars 2, Elder Scrolls Online, and Final Fantasy, is it 14? I can't remember which one is the MMO version of that game. There's so many. I've never been a big Elder Scrolls fan. I've played Skyrim. It wasn't my favorite, so Elder Scrolls as a world I wanted to immerse myself in just felt like a lot of gray, and I wasn't really interested in that. I also believe it has a subscription, and I wasn't sure if this is something that's going to stick because, it's been a while. Final Fantasy, I've just never played them. I'm not a big anime fan, and I find that a lot of the games, from what I see from the art and the Final Fantasy advertisements, it doesn't really appeal. And with a little bit more research and some feedback from people that are playing various MMOs, Guild Wars 2 rose to the top as a frontrunner, even though it is 10 years old. It does have a free-to-play model, so you can have 2 different characters, and you can play up to level 80, I think, for free. And then the expansions, the most recent of which was just in February, is where you'd have to pay if you want to expand the content. And things like, I think, 8 of the 9 races are available to free-to-play players if you want the extra race, or not race, profession. So the type of play that you're doing, that is exclusive to one of the expansions. And so it's one of those things where the price is right. I already had an ArenaNet account. I had to reset it. Like, I had to contact support and get them to like reset my password and stuff, because the last time I played, I don't even think there was an authenticator on the account. So like, I had to take care of all that kind of security stuff, but it's all sorted out now. The other reason was that when I looked into other MMOs that looked more interesting, more modern, they're all delayed. The one that seemed to be getting a lot of attention online was called Throne and Liberty, and I'm glad I wrote it down because I can never remember the name of this because I've never heard of it. And that has been recently delayed until Q1 or Q2 of 2023. And there is rumors of a riot, not rumors, but like the people have speculation about Riot's MMO, which I believe is in the works, but there's no news about it because Riot isn't saying anything. But that, like, no one knows how long that's going to take before it's available. It's probably years away, which doesn't help the MMO itch right now. So that's why I'm into Guild Wars 2. And Guild Wars 2 is celebrating its 10th anniversary. As a matter of fact, it's today, or that's the date that they've chosen to do this. The Steam version of the game is launching today, though I already had an ArenaNet account, so I just stayed with that. I didn't create a new Steam account. Worth noting that if you have a Steam account and you want to move to an ArenaNet account later, you can't do that. You can play with friends, so new people joining on Steam can play with existing members on ArenaNet. That's not a problem. It's just that because the free-to-play model for Guild Wars 2 has any kind of like rewards or gems or anything like that is account-based, you can't transfer to a different account. Like that's going to be tied to like real-world money in some cases. Most of that stuff, if not all of it, is aesthetic, with the exception of buying expansions. That's like gameplay access. There's also Twitch drops. For the first time, Guild Wars 2 is doing Twitch drops. Those launched today at 12 o'clock Pacific. I'm going to be streaming. I streamed last night, and we created a character. I created a Norn warrior. He looks like the Hulk, and Geralt of Rivia had like a twin. They've kind of combined them. He's a monster. It's going to be pretty fun, I think, to explore the warrior profession. I often will go with like a paladin-like class, or even like a try to go against type and go like a spellcaster. But I just thought, you know what, I kind of just want to bash stuff, because Guild Wars 2 has like action combat. Like you can dodge and move out of the way of some things, and so I thought having a warrior could be kind of interesting. The other thing that's happening is there's a patch updating today as well. That's going to be addressing some balance changes. That's more for people later on, I think, in the game. Leveling and quality of life, though, will affect how my experience goes. So I decided to create the character last night live on stream and then wait until after the update comes out today. So I'll be streaming with Twitch drops turned on later and doing my very first levels. Like we're currently level 0 or 1 or whatever you want to call it, standing at the starting zone, and that's where we finished the stream yesterday. And I'm looking forward to it. It's a little bit strange. Like I spent so much time in WoW that having different graphics and different controls, and I mean they're similar but different. Even just the way that the camera moves is a little bit strange, and I would have had custom settings back in the day on WoW, so now I've got to kind of go into my controls and kind of sort that out in Guild Wars 2. But one thing I noticed immediately streaming last night was how helpful, respectful, and funny the new people in chat were. I brought in a number of new people just because I was playing Guild Wars 2, and because of the hype around the game right now, I think a few people found my stream, and they were really nice. You know, they were offering help, but politely. They weren't trying to backseat or like tell me what to do. And I had questions about the character creator. I had questions about like, if I go back, do I lose my progress? Like all that kind of stuff. Do the choices I'm making here matter in terms of gameplay? And they're like, nah, this is just like a little bit of story flavor. Like you being more aggressive in your character choices in terms of your personality just means that you're going to be a little bit more gruff in cutscenes, and you're not going to be quite as like forgiving or graceful or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's fine. Like I don't need to be charming. I'm okay with being a bit of a brute, you know, as a warrior. I'm okay with being blunt, you know, in my conversations in different cutscenes. Because unlike other MMOs, Guild Wars 2, your character is voiced in the cutscenes, which I think is really cool. So I'm looking forward to it. It's been a long time. Like I said, I messed around with a Char character, which is like a hyena or a cat-like person. But they're quite big. They're quite muscular. And the Norn are, as it sounds, based on like a Norse people. And they're like giants. They're head and shoulders taller than humans. So I basically went with the biggest Norn I could find and made them about as wide as I could make them. And so I'm a walking house. And I'm hopefully going to find a weapon that looks like a door and a stick, and just, you know, be able to smash enemies with it. So I'm looking forward to it. It's been a while since I've been in an MMO. And you and I talked about this, I think, in between podcasts. But you've either played Guild Wars 2 or you at least checked it out at one point.
So it's been a while. So the game originally released in 2012. So as you said, 10-year anniversary. And I'm trying to remember. I remember playing Guild Wars 1, and it was a big deal because at the time, WoW was huge. It was I think probably right around the Burning Crusade when Guild Wars 2 was released. And I think what the major function of it was, at least back then, was that it was a pay up front, no subscription. You just got access to it. You bought expansions. I think I'm recalling that correctly. That was its big selling feature, is that you just bought the game. And I think I bought it at launch. And I remember actually how I was trying to find out was just searching in my email, like, okay, Guild Wars 2, and hoping something would pop up to kind of remind me of when I played. But I do remember buying Heart of Thorns, which was their first expansion, but I have not checked it out since. It is really cool that it's coming to Steam. It is unfortunate that you can't log in to your you can't they're two separate accounts, but you can cross play, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I have an I have a not NCSoft. I have an ArenaNet account. That's where I originally started, because obviously it wasn't on Steam 10 years ago. And if you, a new player, will say created a Steam account today and decided to download the game and play it, then you and I could play together. I think the only restriction is that you and I would have to be on the North American realm. So there's realms and worlds, and I don't think you have to be on the same world, but you certainly have to be on the same realm. And it's confusing. I got in a good way. I got a lot of answers yesterday live in Twitch chat, but it was all going by so fast, like I didn't really retain all of it. I got the question answered in the moment, but then didn't remember 5 minutes later.
Right.
So yeah, you can. I think there's something to do with PvE, so player versus the world. It's a lot. It's like everybody's all together, but then PvP gets segregated in that, like, North America can't fight EU because of, like, probably lag and just like that kind of stuff with competitive play. So if you're more of a player versus environment person like I am, then playing with friends across platforms shouldn't be a big deal. I think that a couple of people in the community just decided to just switch over and play on the North American server. I'm on, I can't remember what it's called, Dragon Hold or Dragonborn. I think it's Dragon Hold is the world that I'm on. And I didn't choose it. When I logged in, it brought me to my old character creation screen with the char. I just deleted it. I thought, I'm not going to try and start from level 5. That would probably be confusing. Like, I'd rather just start fresh. And I also wanted to have the full leveling experience as they've reimagined it with this new update. So I thought I'll just delete the character. Like, it's been years. There's nothing important tied to this character. I still have the account, so any account reward is going to be there. But you're right. The account thing is what you can't cross over, because I think what it means is, like, if someone gives you Steam bucks, then you could use it to buy cosmetics in Guild Wars 2. And
right.
They don't want people to be able to translate Steam bucks from Steambox out to real world money in an ArenaNet account, I guess. I'm not sure exactly the logics. There's probably a bunch of different technical stuff behind the scenes too, because apparently it's been a while. I don't know, but the people that have been learning about Guild Wars 2, they've been talking about Steam for quite some time. And apparently it was supposed to be released, and then they delayed it. So now they kind of like put it all in this 10-year anniversary thing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's like some games will do, basically you can buy it, get the game through Steam, and like it's just a launcher essentially that launches the client for the MMO. It sounds like if they are restricting and basically creating two versions of the game that work together, it sounds like you log in with your Steam account and
yes.
Yeah, so that's an interesting approach. I mean, honestly, it allows folks who want to live within the Steam ecosystem to continue to do so. I mean, personally, I don't like having I like to have my games within a launcher that I know and trust, and there are plenty of launchers. But yeah, like I would. It's funny. I'm going through ArenaNet, and I'm like, I don't even think I know the password to my account. Like, how hard is it going to be to like get back into it? Like, did I have two-factor? I don't even think they had two-factor authentication.
No, they didn't, as far as I can tell. No, I actually got my account unlocked in a day. It was I reset my password because I didn't remember it, and I got the email to reset it. it allowed me to reset it. But then when I tried to log in, ArenaNet told me that my account was blocked for security reasons. More than likely just because it was an inactive account for years. And they just thought, better safe than sorry, let's just lock it down for inactivity, preventing any potential hacking from happening. And we'll just, deal with it when the time comes, if the person ever comes back. And when I did, I just emailed support, which I couldn't do from inside ArenaNet. I couldn't create a ticket because you couldn't log in to create a ticket. But you could just email support. And I said, look, I have access to this email. This is the email that I used to reset the password, which worked correctly. I was, informed that I was blocked because for security reasons. I have access to this email address. I would like to reactivate my account. Please advise. I was emailed back within 4 to 6 hours. I streamed Minecraft that afternoon, so I don't remember exactly how long it was, but I get a reply back same day. And then they basically said, I've unlocked your ArenaNet account. You have to reset your password again. And that's fine. I made it the same thing as I made a new password, a new secure password earlier that day. I just typed it in again and it worked. I thought for a second I might have to change it a little bit, but they let me use the brand new secure password. And then the very next paragraph in the support email was like, and here's all the different ways that you can keep your account secure. And here's a link to the different authenticators that we, utilize with two-factor on ArenaNet. And so I used the Google Authenticator. And so it's the same one I use for a lot of different games and things like that. So it's very simple, straightforward. It took me 5 minutes once I got the email to reclaim the account and start downloading the game. It was pretty simple. So for anybody out there that's interested, in the Discord, we have a Guild Wars 2 channel. We're going to be talking about where we're planning, what we're doing. I'm hoping this is going to catch on. It's going to be, hopefully it's something that's fun and social for people that are interested in playing an MMO. I know it's 10 years old, but from what I can tell, the people that I've been watching stream on Twitch to kind of familiarize myself with the game a bit, have been positive and fun, and it's a bright, colorful game. It's got, I want to say, slightly better graphics than WoW, but then still has some quality of life stuff that I thought was frustrating with WoW. Like what I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter what race you choose. You can be any of the 9 professions or any of the 8 professions with the free to play. So you just pick your flavor. You can look how you want to look and then choose the way that you want to play based on your profession. Your race has got nothing to do with it other than how cool you look as a Norn warrior versus an Azura warrior. The Azura are like the little Yoda-like looking guys, which don't look overly aggressive. Their culture is more about gadgets and gears and inventions and potions and things. So, but yeah, it's been fun to learn about so far. I'm curious to see how the launch is going to go today. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to log into the server. I did not check because it didn't bounce me back out to the server select screen when I changed my character. And it just put me on the same server, which happened to be a high population server, which will be higher today, I'd imagine. So we'll see how that goes, but it should be fun. I was surprised how much enjoyment and conversation I got out of a character creation stream last night on Twitch. So playing the actual game should be a lot of fun. I'm sure very frustrating for any Guild Wars 2 seasoned vets in the chat that are going to watch me fumble over an MMO that I haven't touched in 10 years, but we'll see how that goes.
I was just looking at it, and I was trying to determine what I had on my account, because there are expansions, but it's hard to tell. So are expansions free? Are some of the expansions free? Because I know the game's been out a while. Do you have to buy all of them?
I think the expansions are paid. So there's no subscription as far as I know for access, but the expansions I think are along the lines of that's where they're making their money. So you get, the game's been out for 10 years. So the base game up to level 80 is free. And then if you want to get into current end game, which would be the raids at the end of these expansions or the story, because the story continues in the expansions as well, then you have to pay for the expansion. And the only other thing that costs real world money is gems, and those are used to buy cosmetic things I think there's armor sets. You can buy different mount things. There's a transmog system apparently, and I don't know this yet because again I'm just starting, but apparently the whole fashion economy, I think is what they call it in Guild Wars 2. It's basically just people wanting to trick out their characters to make them look as cool as possible.
I'm just looking at their website. So this is likely in American dollars here, I'm guessing. But it's so the first 2 expansions you get as a bundle for $30. You can buy the third expansion standalone for $30 as well, or you can buy all the expansions that are available, Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire, and End of Dragons for $50. So that's not a bad deal to catch up on all that content.
No, and they've got, I think, that special happening now because of the anniversary. There's supposed to be some sort of bundle where you can buy all of them in one go on Steam. I thought someone said it was $90, but I must be forgetting about something. Oh, you know what it is? There's more than expansions. There's world events or world something, which are not expansions, but they're almost like paid access to content. I don't remember what they're called. Again, like I've had so much information thrown at me in the last like week since I decided to pull the trigger on this and explore it. So I'll be taking my time later today, streaming on Twitch, and I've been posting the VODs on my YouTube channel, which is Joel Duggan VODs. My main YouTube channel is strictly for Minecraft edited content, but I've got a VODs channel that's like Guild Wars 2. It's got Minecraft VODs, it's got Satisfactory VODs on it. So I just kind of archive my Twitch VODs there. So for people that want to see the character creation and want to follow the adventures of my warrior, then check out Joel Duggan VODs or just Joel Duggan on Twitch. I'll be probably streaming more this week than not because the drops go from the 23rd to the 28th. So I'll be trying to fit in as many Guild Wars 2 streams as I can. I will also be playing Satisfactory and Minecraft, of course, on my regular days, but hopefully we'll see people there. So over the weekend, you and I had a chance to play Halo Infinite multiplayer, which I had not had a chance to experience at all before. And you've played, I want to say, most of the Halo games?
I think I've played all of them. Halo is a game or a franchise that I was obsessed with when it first started, and I think it was basically Halo 1 through 4 that I think 4 being sort of the tail end of I still love Halo, but it was one of those things where once you play 5 or 6 in the entry or in the franchise, it's like, you know what, I'm cool to wait for the next one. I think we've gotten that taste, and I'm good to wait. Excited to play new ones, and I think Infinite was the same deal. It's like, take the time to release it. It was delayed a year. Like a whole year. It was supposed to launch with the Series X and was delayed. And again, when I played it at launch, I was like, I'm really glad to be back with Halo. I don't need to play another one of these like right away. I'm again content to wait, but I've had a lot of fun with the franchise over the last, I guess, a decade and a half. It's been going on for quite a while.
I tried to get into the first Halo when they re-released I think it's the Master Chief Collection or something. They released it for like the Xbox Series X and I think maybe Steam or something like that all at the same time, probably around an anniversary. And I tried to get into the first game, and it was fine, but I found it kind of clunky and frustrating, and I didn't understand what was going on. And after talking with you, once I got my Xbox Series X, you said that you could probably just jump into Halo Infinite and not really be too far out of the loop as far as the gameplay goes. Plus, then you'd have like modern graphics and, modern controls and stuff like that. And I'm guilty of playing Halo Infinite single player when it first came out and not giving it enough time. I played probably an hour, and because I'm not the best at it, I was frustrated with it. And I ended up not even getting out of the intro mission, which in my opinion was a little bit too long and felt very samey. And it wasn't giving me a lot of story bits to keep me going. It was more just like, shoot more bad guys. Like, yep, but why? Like, tell me why I'm going through all of this. But then I decided I was in the mood for a first-person shooter, and I got back into it a few weeks ago. And I completed what was probably the last 10 minutes of the intro mission. And I thought like, well, crap, had I just given it 10 more minutes, then I would have been down on the Halo surface in the open world map, which is a very different experience than the intro. It's much better. It's much more immersive. There's way more to do. There's more choice. There's more story. There's more everything. And I just got sucked in. I started doing the campaign and following things through. I'm a completionist, so I've been picking up my upgrades. I've been grabbing my cosmetic stuff that don't matter in single player, but matter in multiplayer, I guess, and then doing the story. And I've been really enjoying it. It's grabbed me in a way that I didn't really expect, even though I'm really foggy on the history. Like I've got this AI that's not Cortana who I know, like through pop culture, I know who Cortana is, but like it's not Cortana. I think she's just called the Weapon. I don't think she has a name. Because I
Right.
just keep on calling her not Cortana because I know I just know that's what she's not. And I like her. Like she's got a great personality. That she's the jokey comic relief. You know, she's a little bit cocky and snarky. And Master Chief is a man of few words. But when he does say something, I find that usually it's like action movie joke funny. Like he's usually kind of sarcastic or, you know, kind of like action movie one liner kind of stuff. Um, I find the gameplay a little bit repetitive up until you get to the boss fights. The boss fights usually teach you something new. You have to use a new mechanic, but I find everything pretty good. Like I said, I'm just lost on the story, but as far as the things that they're doing right, I feel like things like terrain traversal and the grapple for like pulling yourself up on the ledges or stunning enemies is really good. The voice acting is really good. Like I said, not Cortana is fun. I think it's Jen Taylor that does the voice. The open world map is really cool. The last time I played a Halo game, again very briefly, I felt like I was on rails. Whereas this is cool. You can, if you've only got 20 minutes, you can log in and just like take a forward operation base or just go hunting for upgrades, and you'll end up shooting enemies and having battles. But it's not going to be like as in depth as a story mission, which is beefy. Like I sat down one night to play for an hour, and I ended up playing for like two because the one mission that I was on took that long to complete. It was that much of a fight, and I thought that's pretty good in terms of keeping the story beats and the objectives coming at you. Like what ends up happening is like, oh, we have to go explore this thing and shut it down. And then when you get there, they've sabotaged the thing and you can't shut it down the way that you thought. So then you have to do like 4 more tasks in order to shut down the thing or whatever it happens to be. And I found that was cool. It just means that I was playing for a lot longer than I expected, which I guess as far as content goes, like that's a good thing for gamers. Like you kind of want it to be more complicated than you expect. And Halo is not that complicated, so it's nice when they kind of throw you those twists. I do find that the guns are really fun. I don't remember the names of most of them, but if this list is going to be true, the one that surprised me the most and actually made me laugh out loud was the Sentinel beam. Are you familiar?
Yeah, that's the one you just point at it and it shoots a laser, right?
Laser, but I mean, we're talking like it vaporizes the bad guys into like dust, kind of like when Thanos snapped his fingers in Avengers Infinity War. Like they completely vaporize, and it makes a really satisfying deep like zap noise and kind of shakes your controller. And I picked it up going like, well, this looks cool. Like, I mean, it's called a Sentinel beam. I'm assuming it's some sort of laser weapon. But then when I pulled the trigger and the guy in front of me just like evaporated, I was like, okay, sci-fi game, you win. That was very satisfying because most of the time I'm running around with an assault rifle, and that I do find problematic. I think that no matter what I do, I always seem to want an assault rifle and then some sort of energy weapon as my second. I really want to carry a sniper rifle, but I don't feel like I can't leave the assault rifle behind. And I feel like I have to bring an energy weapon because otherwise the dudes with shields just eat your ammo. And I feel like you kind of have to take those two things. And so by comparison, the other first person shooter that I played a lot is Borderlands. And I think you get a slot for every type of weapon in that game. And I would prefer at least 3 slots for Master Chief, if not more. I feel like he should be able to carry a lot. But it's been a little bit frustrating there. But I know we're pressed on time, so I want to talk about the multiplayer because that's really, the thing that was new to me. So you and I on Saturday night hung out live on Xbox, and I have to say, like, our connection and like audio and stuff was pretty good. Like for just connecting over the Xbox with earphones and the controller, like I was impressed by the fact that we had a pretty seamless connection.
Yeah. No, we were talking a bit about it after we had played, and for me, I love to play video games, but I am stuck in my ways where if I have a small amount of time, like if I have an evening to play video games, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna jump into my latest solo adventure like Xenoblade Chronicles 3. But I've tried to basically anytime someone reaches out, it's like, hey, do you want to play multiplayer games? Like, yes. Doesn't matter. Let's do it. Doesn't matter what we play because I'm just so bad at not setting up those multiplayer games. I love Halo, and I think when I was talking to you, I hadn't played in like 6 months. I played around launch. But yeah, we had a lot of fun, and I think that the Xbox ecosystem, there is crossplay, so you can, it's all tied together by the Xbox profile, and you can use, we were using party chat, but there is in-game chat as well, although I prefer party chat. This way you're only hearing the person you're playing with. That's just my approach. Although I know if we were all on comms, some of the modes we were playing probably would have gone a bit better, but to be honest, like, I had fun no matter what. So
Oh, for sure. And if everybody on the team is trying, then if everybody kind of understands the map and knows what you're doing, then I think it works out well. That was the thing that surprised me the most, was the different modes and how much I liked them. Because the last time I played multiplayer first-person shooter, it was basically just free-for-all. It was either one team versus the other, Axis versus Allies, or it was a free-for-all. And I prefer the objective-based maps because I'm not the best first-person shooter, nor am I the best with a controller on the Xbox for that kind of stuff. I'm definitely more of a mouse and keyboard FPS person. And with this, like, I found that and what was it called? It was not encampment. It was in the event that we were playing. And it was basically like every round, 3 control points would show up in the map. And yes, there'd be firefights as you and the other team were trying to fight over control, but there was 3 points and 4 players per team. So you had to divide and conquer, and ultimately like 2 of you would go to one control point, and it was a matter of like, were you going up against 1 of the other team, 2 of the other team, maybe 3 of the other team? And if you had everybody on comms, it would be easier to divide and conquer. But we did okay on some maps where like the other 2 people that we couldn't hear were obviously skilled enough and knew what was going on that they would try hard, and if we went to one point, they would go to the other, and we ended up doing okay.
yeah, I think that that mode was like, so when we were playing, they had not only, so there's battle passes and stuff, and the event that was running had its own separate event battle pass, and it was one specific mode that you played and to complete quests to get XP and stuff, and it was sort of a more fast-paced King of the Hill, and it took us some time to kind of get used to the strategy of it, because again, like, if you just captured the point closest to you, then the other team would divide and conquer and take the other 2, and you'd always be outnumbered. And there weren't rounds per se, but there were 3 spots that would spawn each time, and you're right, like, you would always have a firefight, and depending on, and the respawn timer was quite long. So again, like, if you died, you kind of left your team at a disadvantage, because then they'd have to defend against 1 extra player, and they wouldn't have an extra player on their side. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, that mode, and we did switch it up occasionally. We moved into like a more general playlist as well, which had, I think we played a round to Capture the Flag, we played a round of King of the Hill, and that sort of expanded upon how many players were in the game, and certainly made vehicles more viable. I think the event that was running was more of like anytime someone was using vehicles, they lost that round because it was a very tight gameplay style.
The event stuff usually had more corridors and platforms and vertical traversal. Like, I always was very happy when I found a grapple on the battlefield, because I'm so used to having one in single player that getting vertical is advantageous and easy in single player, but without it, I was kept on pressing the empty button, going like, "Gah! I don't have this thing." Like, I really miss it. It reminds me of Batman, the Arkham series, where you can just kind of like look up and grapple anything and be pulled into the air immediately, and they do that very well. Especially when they use it as a stun, and that's where I suffer in multiplayer, is that I'm not good when people are like super up close. I can't seem to time the melee strikes very well, and so that's a problem for surviving in that kind of close quarter battle. I got a little bit frustrated, I think, later on, but I think it just could be the fact that like some of these people are just really, really good. But I was just, it was refreshing to not have like a everything absolutely 100% depending on whether or not you can get a headshot. Like, that was not the case in the gameplay. Like, there was definitely strategies. We ran into some people where we won handily because like they were either just not playing the strategy, either didn't understand it or didn't care. And that felt bad winning too, because like, well, that wasn't even challenging. Like, I preferred the matches where we won like 11-9 or 11-7 or something like that. Like, it would be a much tighter competition.
Yeah, there were definitely moments where I think matchmaking was on our side, and then it wasn't. Um, and yeah, like there's, I think with the smaller matches, like the more bite-sized ones, the sort of AFK detection didn't kick in quite fast enough for the other team. But I think if you're playing on longer modes, there's a bit more systems in play that will um, try to get an active player back in. But yeah, like the most fun we had, I think, were the really close matches, the more evenly matched playing. And I think that's where, because we were playing as a party, I think it tries to at least match us with another team that has like a party playing as well, which then can bring in more advanced players, right? Because they're playing together. But for the most part, I think you and I were ranked. We were around the same rank, like in terms of matchmaking. We probably had a similar profile setup in terms of the experience we had in the game. So I think it was pretty evenly matched. Like we had there weren't many modes that we kind of got rolled over. So it was a lot of fun, and I think we ended up playing like 3 hours or so. It was a good time.
It was close to that. It was fun to kind of have that interaction, because I share video games live on stream all the time, but it's just me playing and then talking about what I'm doing. And it's really different when you've got someone, in your ear that you're playing with and have to strategize with. Like, I have to communicate to you that I'm going to, capture point A, and you're like, okay, I'm going to C. And then 5 seconds later, like, no, C's got like 3 people, or something like that. Like, you're dealing with, oh, that's their strategy, and you're letting me know what's going on. And I just find that fun. Like, it reminds you of being in an action movie when people are talking over comms and like saying the lines and doing that kind of stuff. It's just, it's a lot of fun. And I need to do it more often, because like the Xbox is so good at that. And I don't take advantage of it as often, because when I'm casually gaming for myself, I don't tend to be at the computer, because I spend so much of my workday at a computer. And with streaming being part of my job, which I enjoy immensely, it is still more time in the computer chair, and I prefer sometimes to have like a relaxing time on the couch. Well, that is the end of this episode of the Citadel Cafe. If you enjoyed the things that Ryan and I talked about today and want to find some links, you can check that out at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod, and you can email us at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com, or find the show by name on Twitter. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Word of mouth is the easiest way to support the show. Just tell a friend about the Citadel Cafe and where they can go to listen to it. The Citadel Cafe is 100% listener supported. If you're getting value out of the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back in. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Joining at any level will get you an invite to the member-only Discord server shared with my personal Discord, and access to the Baristicast bonus audio sessions. Special thanks to our Bean Counter patrons, Cosmic and Smurf588. Patron count is steady on at 28 this week. If you'd like to be patron number 29, visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything I am doing online, including my illustration and design portfolio, at joelduggan.com. Listen to my other podcast all about Minecraft at thespawnchunks.com, and follow me on social media at Joel Duggan and Joel Duggan on Twitch, where I mentioned earlier I'm going to be streaming Guild Wars 2 along with Minecraft and Satisfactory. So look for more content on Twitch from me moving on into the fall. Ryan, dude, thanks so much for taking the time today to hang out. Where can people find you and all the cool things that you're doing online?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at rmurphy, and you'll find all the podcasts that I'm currently doing at tgistudios.com, which includes The Gamers In, our general gaming podcast, Zombies Ate My Podcast as well, which is, you may be familiar with Lou, who guests on TCC in the past. We do a zombie podcast, and also Dungeons and Diapers, which is a general geek podcast, while also chatting about our parenting adventures. I think this week we're doing a spoiler conversation for Spider-Man No Way Home, because it's now available on streaming, at least here in Canada, on Amazon Prime Video. And also I did a road trip with my youngest and got to play around with some Apple CarPlay stuff. So we'll have some tech, we'll have some strategies for interrupting naps while trying to drive 3 hours. So lots of fun to be had on that podcast.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.